Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 80 of The Captain's Heart. Fuck, don't stop. Jeremy put his hand on Gralgiran's mane and held him in Gralgiran's mane and held his head down on his crotch as he thrust. The things his heart could do with that tongue. At this rate, he was going to. The tablet on the table let out an ear-piercing screech, and Gralgiran hurried to grab the collar, leaving Jeremy's crotch exposed to the cool air and panting out of interrupted need. I'm off shift. Then don't answer the fucking comm. Jeremy thought uncharitably. Gralgiran's curse told him there was a reason the ship's captain and alpha of the hunters couldn't afford to cut himself from his crew, even for a well-deserved session of sex with his heart. I'll be right there. Have hunters escort the injured to medical. I'll deal with them once their injuries have been seen to. And that said session was not going to end with Jeremy being done. The big downside of the kind of sting power he had. Gralgiran looked at him as he pulled on his collar. I'm sorry, Jer. I can't let this wait. What happened? 3 of the released convicts got into a fight. From the description, 1 tried to murder the other, and the 3rd got injured trying to break them off. Go, I'll survive. Gralgiran looked at the action. I'll make it up. He chuckled. I know. Check the time, and I'll make sure you do once our shifts are over. Gralgiran kissed him, and Jeremy pushed him away after enjoying it for a few seconds. Go. This isn't making it easier for me to not pin you on the bed and to hell with your work. Gralgiran hurried off. Jeremy resisted a temptation to join him in the shower. If he did, he'd just end up teased, because as playful as his heart could be, he put his duty first. When he was done, he considered finishing himself off and didn't. Masturbation had lost a lot of its appeal now that it wasn't the only way he had to get off. Gralgiran was a much pleasurable way to accomplish that. Showering was quick, another thing that alone was purely utilitarian. Then he headed for the leisure alley to get to a session. To get a session of weight training in. The machine still needed work, but it was reliable enough it wouldn't change the weights once he set them. The loud couple having sex on a bench in the alley did not help his state. He even contemplated dragging Gralgiran there to show the passerby what he had they didn't. Wouldn't that help ship morale? You know what? That's not a question. He thought he was one of his heart's friend. Oh, he thought he saw. One of his heart's friends, splotched of white, black, and gray fur, but the guy seemed to glare at him before rushing away, so probably not. As far as Jeremy was aware, none of Gralgiran's friends were angry at him. Not even the engineer. He swiped his bracelet, then confirmed the profile loaded correctly. Might be the only one using it, but he always reset the profile once he was done, as a way to run an ongoing check of the of the scan's reliability. He went through his back and leg exercise, then went. Then the machine refused to reconfigure to work on his upper body. A quick check didn't tell him where the problem was, so he transferred the operation log and returned to his quarter to look them over until his shift. Jeremy controlled his breathing to keep focused on reconnecting the circuit. He'd just realized that with how spacious the service docks were, he and Gralgiran could sneak in and have sex and probably not disturb any of the conduits or control boards registering the power usage and sending that to the readout for him and the technicians to use in balancing the ship's usage. He adjusted himself and returned to the work of replacing the circuit. The engineer had given him a set to replace as part of regular maintenance. Repairs usually handled them, but he was tired of waiting for them to get to it. The walk to the work hadn't helped his state. 3 of the benches were occupied by people having sex, and one was 4 of them going at it. It was impressive enough. Jeremy had looked until he caught himself wondering which of Gralgiran's friend would want to join the 2 of them. Seeing who he thought was the same man that had glared at him had calmed his ardor, but he'd only seen the back as the men vanished around the corner, so it might have been someone else. Probably was. It wasn't like splotch white, black, and gray was exclusive to one guy, if it had been a guy. At that distance, and as fleeting a look as it had been, it could have been a woman. The last circuit in place, he exited the dock and sealed it. He waited just out of reach while the engineer finished his work with the reactor and wondered how it was he'd never noticed the control board was at the perfect height for him to sit on it and Gralgiran fuck him. He stifled a groan. Would his mind ever stop torturing him today? Technician? Jeremy approached and handed the old boards. All the indicated circuits have been replaced. The section can be powered back up. Instead of sending him off to his usual panel, the engineer stepped into Jeremy's personal space and sniffed. Of course he'd smell something. Kelsirians had keen sense of smell. Everyone in engineer had to know the state he was in. You smell needy. The engineer smirked. Do you need assistance relieving the tension? The offer, when Jeremy had expecting the reprimand, was surprising enough. He didn't immediately answer. He shook himself. No. Sorry, but I have my heart. You know your friend, Gralgiran? The engineer nodded. Then you have my permission to take a break? Oh, what for? To go find your heart, my friend, Gralgiran, so he can help you relieve your tension? I can't do that. I have work to do. The engineer bounced the pack of old circuit as if he was calculating their weight. I can't have you distracted while you work, technician. It could lead to mistakes that would affect the comfort of countless families. I didn't make mistakes, engineer. I'm not at the mercy of my hormones. Hell, if I stopped to go find him at the instant I felt that I needed him, we'd hardly get any work done. Technician Jeremy Bradshaw. The engineer said in a gentle tone. Jeremy hadn't thought. The man capable of, until now, you are not among Earthers. You are among Kelsirians. We understand the need to seek relief at times. That those needs aren't always under our control. Especially when you have a male like your heart as inspiration. I will not think less of you for taking the time to ensure you can give your work all your attention. I appreciate that. Jeremy wasn't entirely sure how comfortable he was with the implication the engineer knew what Gralgiran was like in bed, but I can give the work all my attention. You have my word. It made sense. The two had been friends for a long time. They would have had sex at one point since. At some point. At some point. I don't need the since. Oh, at some point, since, as far as he knew, the engineer wasn't in a relationship. If you are certain. But talk with your heart. He should make sure to leave you sated enough it doesn't affect your work. Jeremy started. Oh, that's not usually the problem. His face heated at the realization of what he'd admitted to his boss. But having said that much, he felt he needed to explain his current situation. Today's just one of those days when duty drops in on us in the middle of, well, it wasn't like he had to give details, and by the smile forming on the engineer's muzzle, he'd given enough for the men to fill in what hadn't been said. Unless there's more, engineer, I'll return to my station. The dismissive wave was amused. Turek sniffed loudly as Jeremy walked by his station. Comment, and I'm using your long name from now on, technician. Doesn't have to, Prateros said on Jeremy's other side. We both know better than to offer to make our break, to take our break with you, to help you. Jeremy closed his eyes. This was going to be a long day. Jeremy's face had to be glowing with how hot it felt. Every Kelsirian who'd walked by him, sitting with the other technicians, sniffed the air. There had been a few offers by technicians he didn't know well, which he turned down. They still looked at him and smiled invitingly, while he did his best to focus on eating. When someone leaned in next to him, Jeremy readied himself to refuse another stranger's advance. But the guy was talking with Thurok, touching his arm. I'll be back shortly, his friend said, standing and going with the stranger. You want to follow them to the alley? Pertiros whispered conspiratorially. No, he protested. In his state, he'd probably end up taking everyone there. One of the technicians said, You've heard of Earther and Stamina. He looked at this plate of meat, trying to get his face to stop burning. It was like they were utterly uncaring that he had someone, just like Turek didn't seem to care about what he was doing, about what he was going to do. Okay. Seemed to care about the consequences. To his relationship. What he was going to do could have. You know we're just teasing, right? Prateros said. Him, Jimmy believed. The other technician, he had his doubt. Now, even Turek's teasing took on a new meaning. Had it been his friend's way of implying it would be okay with both of them cheating on their mates? He wouldn't hold that. He wouldn't hold what Turek was doing against him. It was his friend's personal life, not Jeremy's. But he was going to make sure he didn't care. He was going to make sure he didn't care for anyone teasing past this. He knew. To make sure he knew. He didn't care for anyone teasing past this point. Jeremy went slack on atop Gralgiran. Thank you, he whispered in the main. You have no idea how much I needed this after the shift I've had. His heart chuckled. Seeing how I'm partially responsible for the state you're in, I had to make sure you had release. Partially? Well, if I remember correctly, you were the one who got us started climbing on top of me. Going forward, we start with me getting off and then move on to you. Let you deal with us being interrupted. Gralgiran chuckled. I'll just pull you away once I've dealt with the problem so we can resolve that problem. Not when I'm on shift, Jeremy gently pulled out. Even when soft, the shape of his penis could startle his heart on exit. He rolled on this side. One of your friends has white, black, and gray fur, right? Tom. Has he said anything to you about being angry with me? I've seen someone with that coloring glaring at me a few times today, then storming off. No, he hasn't said anything to that effect. It's probably someone else then. I might have imagined the glaring, or that it was directed at me. Gralgiran nuzzled him, then pushed him on his stomach. How about it distract you from whatever that might have been about? He climbed on top of him. Yes, please. The engineer had nothing to worry about. The Kelsirian's very short recharge time meant his heart satisfied him very well and often. And that concludes chapter 80 of The Captain's Heart. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is available on Ream Story. And if you are looking to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.